get rid of that. And now we'll move to the next psalm that we want to cover. So we covered the gospel canticle for the morning prayer of that day. That's going to be ordinary. It's always the same. And that happens towards the end of the office. At the beginning of the office, we have our various psalms. And the first psalm for that Thursday morning of week 1 is Psalm 57. So let's take a look at that, fellow. That's not where I want to go. I want to go here. There we go. Psalm 57. For the choir director, set to Altasheth, a miktam of David, when he fled from Saul in the cave. Be gracious to me, O God, be gracious to me, for my soul takes refuge in you. And in the shadow of your wings I will take refuge until destruction passes by. I will cry to God Most High, to God who accomplishes all things for me. He will send from heaven and save me. He reproaches him who tramples upon me. Selah. God will send forth his loving kindness and his truth. My soul is among lions. I must lie among those who breathe forth fire, even the sons of men whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Be exalted above the heavens, O God. Let your glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They dug a pit before me. They themselves have fallen into the midst of it. Selah. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast. I will sing. Yes, I will sing praises. Awake, my glory. Awake, harp and lyre. I will awake in the dawn. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your loving kindness is great to the heavens, and your truth to the clouds. Be exalted above the heavens, O God. Let your glory be above all the earth. Anything strike you during the psalm? Anything catch you as interesting, unusual, awkward? I find it a bit strange that it seems to flip-flop all over the place, from hopelessness to praise, back and forth pretty quickly, from affliction to these statements of praise. So let's find out what's happening here in Psalm 57. We've got some good ones to start, kind of not by design, or at least not my design, maybe God's design, and that we did Psalm 18, and that introduced us to a lot of David's life. And that's important to understand the Psalms. He wrote many of them are about him, so having that background helps us. And this one will bring out some more incidents of David's life that we haven't covered yet. Right away, we hit some of these issues that we mentioned in the Psalms, how often we have these terms that we have no idea what they meant. And the meaning was lost long, long ago. It's not like we lost it in the 60s. By the time that the translators of the Septuagint were trying to translate the scriptures, before the time of Christ, they didn't know what these meant. So these were lost long, long, long time ago. And we can speculate on what some of this means. So if we notice here in verse 1, in the New American Standard Bible, it left it untranslated. It said, for the choir director, set to Altasheth, a miktam of David. If we go to our Revised Standard, to the choir master, according to do not destroy. So what's that about? And it's the same for several psalms. We find the same heading on Psalm 58, Psalm 59, Psalm 75. They all say the same thing, do not destroy. So we don't really know what it is. We're thinking maybe it was a well-known melody. And so we know that the particular musical setting for this psalm is that melody. Sometimes we have the same melody, we use different words for it. We did that last week when we did the office, right? For Lent, it's the glory of these 40 days. And when we did the office, it was something else, right? I think we have, for this Sunday, we were rehearsing with the choir, from all who dwell below the skies, but it's also, I know that my Redeemer, same melody, different words. So that's what we're suspecting is happening here, that there's some well-known melody called Al-Tashet, which is translated "do not destroy." And they're saying this psalm gets set to that music. That's a thought. So a miktam, I have no idea what a miktam is, but it's a miktam. A miktam of David when he fled from Saul in the cave. Not quite sure what incident that is, but we have some clues in the psalm of what incident it's talking about here. He says, "Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge till the storms of destruction pass by." We might not recognize it at first, but if we dive into the words there are a few things that make us think this has to do very early in David's life when he's at first fleeing from Saul. That we look at this word of destruction, when the storms of destruction pass by. And it's not a very common word, but it is used twice in Psalm 52. Psalm 52 has a very, very specific setting. Let's go over there for a minute. Psalm 52. And we see, in verse 3 here, or verse 4 in other translations, you are plotting destruction. The same word. He has it a little further down here, I think in verse 8 or verse 9. Righteous shall see and shall laugh at him, saying, "See the man who will not make God his refuge, but trust in the abundance of his riches." I'm not sure where that is with this translation, but we do see it twice in this psalm, and we see it in Psalm 57, this unusual word. But the setting here is very, very specific. This is a maskil. Don't know what a maskil is. Don't know what a miktam is. But whatever it is, it's a maskil of David. When Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul, David has come to the house of Ahimelech. And this was a dreadful, dreadful situation. This is a dreadful event that happens. So we're keying off of this word to maybe give us an idea of what event this is. Let's say it's an unusual word. Our Brown Driver Briggs that we've discussed in the past says it literally means chasm, but it's generally taken as destruction. So what destruction are we referring to? This looks like it's going back to 1 Samuel 20 to 1 Samuel 22. Let's take a look at that section of David's life and see what was happening at that time. And will give us a feel for the Psalms, for David. Because as we read the Psalms, so often they almost sound like someone who's mentally ill. They sound paranoid. They sound utterly despairing. But when we look at what David was living through, what his life was like, we can understand. Not like most of our lives, at least on the physical front. On the spiritual front, it's another story, and that's a different topic. But here we have in 1 Samuel 20, David is talking to Jonathan. Remember, Jonathan is Saul's son. David and Jonathan are absolute best of friends. They are deeply intimate friends. And David's saying, "Why is your father trying to kill me?" And Jonathan's saying, "Nah, he's not trying to kill you." And David's saying, "He sure is." And so what happens is they set up this little test here that David is not going to show up for a meal with the king. And Jonathan's going to make an excuse for him and see what Saul's reaction is. If he says good, then it's fine. If he's angry, then evil is determined for me. So Jonathan says, "Okay, we'll do that." So this happens. And where can we pick it up here? Okay, so David's hiding. They come to this new moon festival, which was a regular type of festival, and the king sits down to eat. This is verse 24. And he sits, and Jonathan's there, and Abner's there, the head of the army, and David's place is empty. And he's not there, he doesn't say anything. But on the second day, he wonders, what's going on here? Why is the son of Jesse, David, not come to the meal? And Jonathan answers Saul, "David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem," David's hometown. "He said, 'Let me go, for our family holds a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there.' And for this reason he has not come to the king's table. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness?" So he flies right off the handle here. "For as long as the son of Jesse lives upon the earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Therefore send and fetch him to me, for he shall surely die." Poor guy's done nothing wrong. And here is Saul's reaction to him just not being there. And Saul and Jonathan get into an argument about it. Why should he be put to death? What has he done? And Saul cast his spear at his own son to kill him. And Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. So he rises in fierce anger, he goes off, and now he goes out to meet David. And they arrange this little thing, this little ruse to find him. And so David meets him out in the field. As soon as the lad had gone, David rose from beside a stone. He fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept one another because they were so close. And they recognized this is ending until David recovered himself. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my descendants and yours forever.'" And he rose and departed, and Jonathan goes into the city. So this is where David initially now flees from Saul, because he knows Saul is trying to kill him. So what happens? So David is fleeing, doesn't know what he's going to do, how he's going to survive. He's hungry, has no provision, has no weapons. So he goes to the city of Nob. So David came to Nob, city, not a person, Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. And Ahimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said, "Why are you here alone and no one with you?" David makes up the story to Ahimelech the priest. "The king has charged me with the matter. Let no one know about the matter I'm sending you, which I charged you." And he says, "Give me what you've got here to eat. 5 loaves or whatever is here." And the priest answered David and said, "I have no common bread at hand, but there is holy bread, if the young men have kept themselves from women." And David answered and said, "Of a truth, women have been kept from us." He's making this up. "When I go on the expedition, they're holy." So the priest gave him the holy bread, which is interesting. Jesus uses this story in the incident about the Sabbath. Right? And he says, remember when David went and ate the bread that was only legal for the priest to eat. But we also know that this is happening on a Sabbath, because the only day the bread was changed was on the Sabbath. So David is fleeing for his life on the Sabbath and asked for this. And elsewhere we find that there was actually, they didn't just give him this bread and break the law, that the priest actually inquired of God and it was okay, and they gave him the bread. So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there but the bread of the presence, the showbread, which is removed from before the Lord to be replaced by hot bread on the day it is taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, because it's the Sabbath. His name was Doeg, the Edomite. So he's not an Israelite. He's an Edomite, different nation, but he works for Saul. He's the chief of Saul's herdsmen. And David said to Ahimelech, "And have you not here a spear or a sword at hand? For I have brought neither my sword nor weapons with me, because the king's business required haste." And the priest said, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah. Behold, here it's wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take that, for it is none but that one here." And David said, "Yeah, there's no other one like that. Give it to me." So David rose and fled that day from Saul, even though it's the Sabbath, and went to Achish, the king of Gath, which is kind of interesting, because remember where Goliath was from? Gath. So it's interesting that he shows up in Gath with Goliath's sword. So when the servants of Achish, they said to him, "Is not this David, the king of the land?" And they, so this is a story. We'll skip over this part right here. So eventually he recognizes that they don't appreciate him being there, so he feigns being crazy. Again, just barely escaping with his life, and leaves from them. So he's fleeing from Saul, who wants to kill him. He's gone to the city of Nob, to the priest, to say, "Do you have anything to eat? Do you have any weapons?" And Ahimelech inquires of God for him. He gives him the bread. He gives him the sword of Goliath. And David leaves, but there's someone who's there, Doeg, the Edomite, the chief of Saul's flocks. So now we come to this next chapter. So David departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down to there, and there were about 400 men with him. Okay, we read this earlier. And David went from there to Mizpah of Moab. He leaves his family behind. And they go hiding. In verse 6, now Saul heard that David was discovered, and the men who were with him. Saul was sitting at Gibeah under the tamarisk tree on the height, with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing with him. And Saul said to his servants who stood about him, hear now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? That all of you have conspired against me? No one discloses to me when my son makes a league with the son of Jesse. None of you is sorry for me or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait, as at this day. You can see Saul is truly paranoid. And Saul may be mentally ill. So he's accusing them all of conspiracy. And as he's taking them all to task, guess who pipes up? Then answered Doeg, the Edomite, who stood by the servants of Saul. I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests who were at Nob, and all of them came to the king. Just like you would expect, right? And Saul said, hear now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, here I am, Lord. And Saul said to him, why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, and that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, so that he has risen against me to lie in wait as at this day? Ahimelech doesn't know what's going on. Ahimelech answered and said, who among all your servants is so faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law? Right? He married Saul's daughter, Michal, and captain over your bodyguard, and is honored in your house. Is today the first time that I've inquired of God for him? This is all normal. What's going on here? No, let not the king impute anything to his servant, or to all the house of my father. For your servant has known nothing of all this, much or little. And the king said, you shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house. And the king said to the guard who stood about him, turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand also is with David. And they knew that he fled, and did not disclose it to me. But the servants of the king would not put forth their hands to fall upon the priests of the Lord. No, they're not going to kill these holy men. They're innocent. They haven't done anything. They're the anointed of God, anointed of the Lord. They're the priests. They're not going to slay them. Then the king said to Doeg, you turn and fall upon the priests. And Doeg the Edomite turned and fell upon the priests, and he killed on that day 85 persons who wore the linen ephod. And Nob, the city of the priests, he put to the sword. Both men and women, children and sucklings, oxen, asses, sheep, he put to the sword. Wipes out the entire city of the priests. But one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. And David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me, fear not, for he that seeks my life seeks your life. With me you shall be safe in safekeeping. So here we see perhaps what this psalm is partly about. When David is initially on the run from Saul, after Saul has just wiped out all the priests of Nob because of Doeg the Edomite, who not only told them and accused them of collaborating with David, but then did the murder himself of killing all these 85 priests. So we get a little bit of a feel for why the Psalms are the way they are. You know, what David has experienced in his life, something probably most of us can not even remotely understand or relate to. What he has experienced, the betrayal, the slaughter, the death. So to the choir master, according to Do Not Destroy, a Miktam of David, when he fled from Saul in the cave, be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me. For in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge till the storms of destruction go by. And certainly these are storms of destruction. They just killed 85 priests. Saul is even angry, almost kills his own son Jonathan. He's paranoid. He's running around the countryside seeking out David to kill him. He's waiting for these storms of destruction to pass by. And while he does that, he's going to seek refuge in the shadow of God's wings, which is a common theme in the Psalms. Even Jesus uses the same analogy. Right? Remember what Jesus says about Jerusalem? It's in Matthew 23 in verse 36. Right? Jesus is coming to Jerusalem and he says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets and stoning those who are sent to you," just like they're going to do with him. Right? "How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you would not." Okay. Famous song that we often sing, or we sing a musical setting of it, right? On eagle's wings. "You dwell in the shelter of the Lord," right? Psalm 91. "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, who abides in the shadow of the Almighty." What does he say in verse 4? "He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler." Buckler is a small shield they hold over your arm. So, with this context, that David has found that Saul is mad, Saul is after him, has almost killed Jonathan. Saul has killed 85 priests and wiped out the entire city of Nob. Only Ahimelech is left alive. That he sings to God, this, "Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful." In this sense, David is looking for physical deliverance. Like someone's trying to kill him. God, have mercy upon me physically. As I said, most of us can't even begin to relate to this life. It's not a whole lot of us who have fled from someone who's actively trying to kill us. Or do we? Sometimes we may not recognize how great a spiritual danger we are in all the time. We do have enemies who seek to kill us, who seek to hurt us, who, given the chance, would do to us just like they did to Job, who wish us death, who wish us ill, who wish us eternal death. And so David cries, "Be merciful to me for my physical deliverance." But we take this psalm internally for ourselves. Indeed, God, please be merciful to me and save me from those who truly wish to separate me from you, who truly wish to take my life and lead me to eternal death. Our threat of death is no less than David's. David's was tangible because it's physical. Our battle and our challenge to death is every day. All we need to do is turn our backs on God at the prompting of the devil, and we are dead. But God is willing to restore our life. He is indeed merciful to us. But let us not think that our lives are that much different from David's. David's threat was physical, but ours is no less real. Ours is spiritual. "Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful to me. For in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge till the storms of destruction pass by," until this life of attack is over. Where do we find our safety? In God alone. Can we possibly stand against the powers of evil on our own? We'd be gone in an instant. But by God's grace, we can stand. Not only stand, but drive out the darkness and drive back those powers of evil. So I cry to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. Again, coming back to some of the physical parts, of the tangible parts of Bible study. This is interpolated. It's not actually in there. This is the Revised Standard trying to help us to understand. But that word is not there. Who fulfills his purpose is not there. It's just been added for clarity. What it literally says is God who fulfills for me. It doesn't say what. It just says God who fulfills for me. I cry to God Most High, to God who comes through. To God who comes through for me. And this is one of the wonderful ways in which we do have peace, despite the fact that we have so many who wish to kill us and such powerful enemies who wish to destroy us. That we can have peace because we trust this God who so loves us, this God who mounted the cross for our sake. And so we have not only faith, but we have hope. And it's interesting to muse on the difference between them. But in light of this scripture, this is one way I've sometimes looked at it, that when we have faith, we trust in what we've been told, what we've been promised. But we have hope is when we trust in what we haven't been told. Okay? I have faith that God will do what He has promised to me. But I also so much trust His love for me that I have hope that everything He does is for my good. That everything that happens to me, no matter what it appears, good or evil, is actually for my good and is touched by God's love. Even if I'm fleeing in the cave, somehow my hope is in God who always comes through for me, who always fulfills for me. So I cry to God Most High, to God who fulfills for me. He will send from heaven and save me. He will put to shame those who trample upon me. God will send forth His steadfast love and His faithfulness. Okay, so He will send from heaven. And again, we have parallelism in a sense. He will send from heaven. What is He going to send from heaven? We find out a little later in the verse, right? What is He going to send from heaven? He's going to send His steadfast love and His faithfulness. We also have something a little unusual here. Remember, we have these words that we don't quite know what they mean, and Selah is one of them. We don't know whether it means there's a pause, whether it's a musical term, whether we get louder, whether we get softer. We really don't know what it means. But it's kind of unusual that it's stuck here in the middle of the verse. Now, of course, when it was originally written, it didn't have verse numbers. But even its placement is just a little unusual. And it's unusual twice. We see it in the middle of the thought here, and we see it in the middle of the thought in verse 7 as well. I'm not quite sure why, except in both cases we see it's when there's this statement of this response by God against the wicked. Okay, so I cry to God who fulfills His purpose for me. He will send forth from heaven and save me. He will put to shame those who trample upon me. And then we have this Selah. We have the same thing further down. I think it's in verse 7. They set a net for my steps. My soul was bowed down. They dug a pit in my way, but they have fallen into it themselves. And so when we have this threat, rescue, somehow we have the Selah. So just a little bit of an unusual placement of this word that we really don't know what it means. I lie in the midst of lions that greedily devour the sons of men. Their teeth are spears and arrows, their tongues sharp swords. We have a number of challenges in this verse. For one, who is it talking about? What is it talking about? It may be talking about Doeg. You know, quite literally, his tongue was a sharp sword. It was his accusing the priests of Nob that resulted in the sword being taken out and slaying 85 of the priests, and then going to the city and wiping out all of their children and all of their wives and all of their people. A tongue that really was a sharp sword, whose teeth were spears and arrows. On the other hand, there are lots of different ways of translating this, so many so that actually in a Catholic commentary on Holy Scripture it says there really is no adequate translation for this. We don't really know what this verse is saying. We don't know enough to translate it properly. Let's look at a couple. So here it says, I lie in the midst of lions that greedily devour the sons of men. Their teeth were spears and arrows, their tongue sharp swords. Let's look at a couple of others. I, in the midst of lions, I lie among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are swords. My soul is among lions. I must lie among those who breathe forth fire. Even the sons of men, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. If we look at the very literal Rotherham translation, it says, my soul is in the midst of lions, I lie down amidst flames. As for the sons of men, their teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue is a sharp sword. There's just no real consensus on how to translate this. So my point here is not that, again, this is necessary for our salvation, but to point out that just be careful as we go through the Scriptures, that often, if we get all wrapped around words, sometimes we're really not sure what these words are. Jewish Publication Society. My soul is among lions. I do lie down among them that are aflame. Even the sons of men whose teeth are spears and arrows and their tongue a sharp sword. So sometimes we really struggle to understand what is said in a verse. And it can be taken several different ways. So for example, the fact that David is lying down among lions or among those who are flames or whoever it is, it could be a statement of how much danger he's in, or it could be a statement of how much he trusts God. That even in the midst of all this danger, he's able to lie down, go to sleep peacefully. We really don't know. We can speculate, we can learn from it, but we really don't know. So we see this back and forth as an expression of trust. Remember I said how it seems to go from despair and he's in great trouble to exaltation. Right? So we have this, he's in the midst of lions that greedily devour the sons of men. And then he says, be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. This is the refrain. Remember, it's poetry. We're going to see it again. So he's asking God for God's justice to come out. He's being falsely accused, falsely hunted. God, let your glory be seen. Let your justice be known. They set a net for my steps. My soul was bowed down. He's in trouble. They dug a pit in my way, but they've fallen into it themselves. Again, God showing his glory by protecting his anointed, by protecting the one who's in danger. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast. I will sing. I will make melody. Awake, my soul. Awake, O harp and lyre. I will wake the dawn. So he's giving thanks, he's giving praise. Is it because he's been rescued? Right? In fact, right after this, remember that David was on one side of the mountain? That's right after this event. David was on one side of the mountain, Saul's on the other side. He's in great danger of being captured. And what happens? The Philistines make a raid, and Saul is pulled away. And David escapes again, yet again. So we don't know if he is praising because he's been granted deliverance, or if it's an anticipation of deliverance. If you think of this singing out to God, remember when Paul is in Philippi? Take a quick look at that, Acts 16. I want to hurry through because we're right at time, but I'd like to finish this psalm. Acts 16, verse 16. Okay, just to set the stage, he's in Philippi, and there's this slave girl who makes money for her owners by telling the future, and she has this demon, and she's constantly hounding them, and he casts out the demon. And rather than celebrating, they're all bent out of shape because now they lost their prophet. So they raise up this whole ruckus in the town, and they arrest them, and they beat them. And not only do they beat them, they then put them into jail. Right? So in verse 19, but our owners saw their gain was gone. They seized Paul and Silas, dragged them to the marketplace before the rulers. They're disturbing the city. They advocate for customs. The crowd joined in attacking them. The magistrates tore the garments off them and gave orders to beat them with rods. And when they had inflicted many blows upon them, they threw them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely. He puts them into the inner prison, fastens their feet in their stocks, and about midnight, what are they doing? Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. And the prisoners were listening, and of course we know what happens next, the earthquake and the jailer and the conversion of the jailer. So we're not quite sure what the setting is here. As I say, whether it's David praising God for deliverance that has happened or just expressing his faith that it is going to happen. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praise to you among the nations. Again, extending out not just to the nation of Israel, but we see these foreshadowings of God reaching out to the Gentiles. Yeah, we'll skip some of those notes because we're right about at the end here. I will give thanks to you, O God, among the peoples. I will sing praise among the nations. For your steadfast love is great to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. He's trusting that God is not going to let wickedness triumph, evil triumph, that there will be justice. So be exalted, O God, above the heavens, and let your glory be over the entire earth, expressing that faith that he had all the way back in the beginning, that God was going to deliver him. So with that, we've gotten halfway through. So I think next time we'll go through the other two canticles that make up the morning office for that day. It's one from Jeremiah and then also Psalm 48. And we'll come back and hopefully knock those out in the first half next time and then do the office in the second half. As I mentioned, no study this coming week, as I will be away. But that's it. As we wrap up, again, I kind of rushed through the end of that, but thoughts, ideas, comments, ways in which you see these Psalms applying to our own lives. That's really our goal, right? We pray the office and it's our song to God. So it's taking these Psalms and making them our own, our song to God, our song of deliverance, our praise from coming to his people and remembering and making the light come into our lives. Thoughts, ideas? Let's go home. It's getting late. All right. Well, with that, then let's pray. Lord, how can we thank you enough? For indeed, you have come to your people and set us free. You have come and given us light so that we may be light. And so we ask for that. We know there are great powers of darkness. One day we'll see and we'll just be amazed at what protection you gave to us, how our guardian angels looked after us, how you indeed restrained the powers of darkness from completely vanquishing us. And so let us leave here with great thanks, with our hearts turned to you, recognizing how deeply dependent we are upon you and how much we can trust and hope in your merciful love for us who has come to set us free. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Until 2 weeks from now.